Special counsel Jack Smith pushes for this December trial for Donald Trump, arraigned just under a month ago, with his aide and co-defendant, Walt Nauta, who you see right there, also facing this indictment on conspiracy, lying, and withholding classified documents. Now, that once obscure valet and body man is back in the news. Everyone saw him that day at Trump's arraignment. These are some shots where he's around Trump or in the background, but he didn't plead that day or the next week or even the week after that. No, Nauta did not enter his plea because there's a Florida legal requirement in that district that you have local counsel. Indeed, the Wall Street Journal reports that Nauta's search for a Florida lawyer had been beset by wariness of reputational damage from a high-profile case involving Trump. In other words, while he is legally presumed innocent and the burden is on the government, it is a public fact that even getting a lawyer is hard when you are this yoked to this person you work for, who's your co-conspirator under the indictment, your co-defendant. Now, the Florida lawyer he did find is a, quote, former public defender with limited experience in the federal courts, according to the New York Times. Indeed, if you check, there's a federal system for this, sort of the Google of courts. It's called PACER, and you can't find her name in PACER in that database. But the Times notes she has handled some local cases. Now, Nauta was out dining with Trump as recently as Friday. You can see him there together. They were in Philadelphia. But this news tonight that Nauta's finally gotten a lawyer so he can finally do step one, which is plead, and I'll get into that, speaks to the potential gap here between two people whose fates are intertwined. A gap in the very literal timing of these arraignments. It's taken 3 weeks, but also potentially a gap in the level of defense they have. It wasn't until today that we got this scene. Nauta getting his own arraignment. This is him entering the courthouse where the lawyer entered a not guilty plea, and those are the new sketches of that. And this hearing was even quicker than Trump's. It lasted about 5 minutes. When Nauta left the courthouse, he declined to answer questions.
Step. Not anything to say?
That was the scene, a little shaky, understandably. That's the video we got of it to show you what happened. And again, one of the big questions here is whether Donald Trump is going to really help this individual. This isn't the first time he's had someone in his inner orbit get into legal trouble. And doesn't look like, from what we can tell, that Trump's helping that much with even getting a lawyer. I mean, he got himself one in time, but Mr. Nauta, again, it took weeks to even get what I just showed you, him walking out of court today. Now, Special Counsel Smith indicted Donald Trump for all of these issues, including espionage. And he indicted Nauta for conspiring with Trump. So everything that Nauta is accused of is basically for Trump's benefit. There isn't in the indictment or in the information we have right now any apparent benefit to Nauta himself. And as I mentioned, Trump aides have been in that position before. Michael Cohen pled guilty to an election crime that was for the election of Donald Trump, for his campaign, not his own. He didn't run. The same incident there is now a part of Trump's other pending criminal trial in New York. So what I'm telling you tonight as we follow Nauta's developments is that his entire case turns on Trump. Both men face the prospect of real prison time if they fight this to the end and lose. And today we got new details on how Nauta acted with the unsealing of part of the original search warrant, which includes for the first time a step-by-step breakdown of what the cameras allegedly caught him doing. They show that he was caught basically making 2 trips to bring boxes out of his storage room, including 50 in one day, 11 more the next day, and then he returned with 25 to 30 boxes. And that is consistent with the timeline we've reported on for you based on the original indictment's evidence, where across from left to right over time, you see how they systematically and repeatedly, the two of them, allegedly misled the FBI, their own lawyers, and hid this material. Altogether, this is the kind of evidence that convinced a judge to authorize the first ever search of a former president's property. Now, why does that matter? Because many of those boxes clearly contained contraband. And just to lay this out tonight, that's the material the prosecutors wanted. Now, contraband can be drugs in one case, could be classified documents in another. But if you're moving 10, 20, or 30 boxes, it's impossible to then claim that that was a rounding error. I can't remember one missing box or an honest mistake or something that you completely forgot. And here's what I'm telling you. This isn't an opinion or an observation here. This is the hard evidence, which we have the reporting that proved to a judge there was probable cause of that contraband being in Mar-a-Lago, of the fruits of a potential crime. And these tapes, the surveillance tapes, the audio tapes, that's the evidence that went from probable cause, which is how they searched, to then Jack Smith indicting on a premise that he says he can prove these crimes by both these men beyond a reasonable doubt. The tapes change things, and they say they have tapes on tapes. A recent filing suggests multiple tapes, that there's some additional tape even beyond the surveillance and the Trump audio recording that made so much news and that we've now heard about, where Donald Trump effectively started to cook his own goose, evidentiary-wise, and put more heat on this co-conspirator Nada. And so, again, as I'm telling you, if this were a more traditional case, and it certainly isn't, much of what I'm talking about right now, we might have gotten into the day of the original arraignment when both individuals would have been arraigned, but Nada couldn't get a lawyer in time. Imagine working for the former president, being paid by him, maybe having him say or even effectively act in ways that make you think that no matter how expensive the federal case gets, and these things can add up, you're going to be covered, you're going to be good. And then it takes you weeks to even get a lawyer who, as we mentioned, no disrespect, is not exactly the most celebrated lawyer. It's certainly not the lawyer that Donald Trump chose. So, all that, and then imagine that your co-defendant and your boss is doing things you're not doing, saying things you're not saying, and adding heat to both of your cases. Because we've gone through those tapes as well as Donald Trump's public, meandering, and sometimes confessing interviews, and they don't match up well.
The Iran attack plan, you remember that? Ready? You were recorded.
It wasn't a document.
Well, with Millie, let me see that. I'll show you an example. Look, this was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him.
When I said that I couldn't declassify it now, that's because I wasn't president. I never made any bones about that. When I'm not president, I can't declassify.
See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
This is classified. Is not what you want to hear if you're co-defendant Nada and you're in court today and your defense is, we were just moving boxes, we didn't know they were stolen classified documents.